I can't rely on my child. Don't have any savings or pension. How I take care of myself. In my old age. As individuals age, the likelihood of relying on pensions for sustenance in their twilight years significantly increases. For elderly individuals devoid of pensions, the prospect of a worry-free golden age is contingent upon substantial property ownership or the unwavering filial devotion of their offspring. Absent these assets or familial support, a serene old age becomes a distant dream. Consider the case of Zhang Weimin, an 83-year-old man without a pension or substantial wealth. The Chronicles of Elder Zhang Weimin. As I sit here, pen in hand, on the eve of my 83rd birthday, I find myself compelled to record the journey that has brought me to this point. My name is Zhang Weimin, and my story is one of hope, heartbreak, resilience, and ultimately, rediscovery. I was born in a small village on the outskirts of Hangzhou in 1941 amidst the turmoil of war. My earliest memories are of my mother's worried face and my father's absence as he fought against the invading forces. Those were lean years, filled with uncertainty, but they forged in me a resilience that would serve me well in the decades to come. After the war, our family, like many others, struggled to rebuild. Through sheer determination and countless sacrifices, my parents managed to send me to school. I was the first in our family to receive a formal education, a fact that filled my parents with immeasurable pride. Their joy only grew when I was accepted into a teacher's college in Guangzhou. It was there, in the bustling city of Guangzhou, that I met the love of my life, Li Hua. She was studying literature, her eyes always sparkling with the excitement of a new poem or story she had discovered. We married soon after graduation, both securing teaching positions at local schools. Those early years were filled with promise and dreams of the future we would build together. Our son, Jian, was born 2 years into our marriage, followed 3 years later by our daughter May. Life was challenging but rewarding. We poured our hearts into our work and our children, always striving to provide them with opportunities we never had. Weekends were spent helping Jian and May with their studies, taking family trips to the local park, or visiting the bustling markets of Guangzhou. As Jian and May grew, so did their ambitions. Jian, always the go-getter, set his sights on the booming business world of Shanghai. May, our quiet dreamer, aspired to study abroad. Li Hua and I encouraged their dreams, even as we worried about how we would manage to support them. Through careful saving and some additional tutoring work, we managed to send Jian to a good university in Shanghai and later helped May secure a scholarship to study in Beijing. Our home felt emptier without them, but Li Hua and I found joy in their successes and in our shared life together. But life, as I've learned, rarely follows the path we envision. Just as we were settling into our new routine as empty nesters, Li Hua began to complain of persistent fatigue and pain. Initially, we dismissed it as overwork, but when her symptoms worsened, we sought medical help. The diagnosis was devastating: late-stage pancreatic cancer. The next year was a blur of hospital visits, experimental treatments, and sleepless nights. We spent every yen we had saved, and then some, fighting against the inevitable. Jian sent money when he could, but he was just starting his career and had his own financial struggles. May, still in college, could offer only emotional support. Despite our best efforts, Li Hua passed away on a crisp autumn morning. The world lost its color that day. The silence in our home was deafening, the emptiness overwhelming. I found myself going through the motions of living, teaching my classes mechanically, returning to an empty house each evening. It was during this dark period that Jian suggested I sell our family home and move to Shanghai. He argued that the change of scenery would do me good, and that being closer to family would help ease my loneliness. May, worried about my isolation, agreed with her brother. After months of deliberation and many sleepless nights, I decided to take the plunge. Selling our home was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Each room held memories of Lihua and our life together. But I reminded myself that home is not just a place, but the people we love. With that thought, I packed up our life and moved to Shanghai. The initial months in Shanghai were a whirlwind of adjustment. The city's pace was far more frenetic than what I was used to in Guangzhou. Jian helped me find a small but comfortable apartment in a quiet neighborhood, not far from where he lived with his wife, Lan Ying, and their young son, Xiaoming. At first, things seemed promising. Jian and his family visited every weekend. We'd have dinner together, and I'd spend time with Xiaoming, telling him stories of his grandmother and our life in Guangzhou. May would call regularly from Beijing, updating me on her studies and her plans for the future. But as time passed, I noticed subtle changes. Zhang's visits became less frequent, often canceled at the last minute due to work commitments or Xiaoming's extracurricular activities. When they did visit, Lan Ying seemed distracted, often engrossed in her phone or talking about their social engagements. Xiaoming, once eager to hear my stories, now rolled his eyes at his old-fashioned grandfather's tales. May graduated and secured a job with an international company in Beijing. Her calls became sporadic, usually quick check-ins during her commute. I found myself spending more and more time alone in my apartment, watching the world go by from my window, feeling increasingly disconnected from the life bustling around me. It was during this period of growing isolation that Jian approached me with what he called an exciting opportunity. He had started a new business venture and needed capital to get it off the ground. He asked if he could borrow a substantial amount from my savings, assuring me it was a sure thing and promising to return the money with interest within a year. I was hesitant. The money from selling our Guangzhou home was meant to secure my retirement. But Zhang was persuasive, painting a picture of a prosperous future for his family and how I'd be proud to have played a part in their success. Against my better judgment, swayed by a mixture of loneliness and a desire to feel needed, I agreed. I transferred most of my savings to Jian, keeping just enough for my daily expenses. Months passed, and whenever I inquired about the business or the loan, Jian would give vague responses or change the subject. As 1 year turned into 2, it became painfully clear that I wouldn't be seeing that money again. The realization that I had jeopardized my own financial security hit me hard. I felt foolish and betrayed. The comfortable retirement I had envisioned slipped away, replaced by a growing anxiety about my future. It was during this low point that May called with news of her own. She was getting married and moving to Canada with her husband. She asked if I could contribute to their down payment on a house, framing it as an investment in their future. When I explained that I had already given most of my savings to Jian, she became upset, accusing me of favoring her brother and not supporting her dreams. The rift between us grew. Jian's visits stopped entirely, and May's calls became even rarer. I found myself alone in a city that never truly felt like home, with dwindling resources and a growing sense of isolation. Depression set in. I stopped going out, barely ate, and spent most of my days watching mindless TV shows. My health began to deteriorate, and I started to wonder if this was how my story would end, alone and forgotten in a city of millions. But fate, it seems, had other plans. One particularly gloomy morning, as I was half-heartedly watering the few plants on my balcony, I heard a commotion from the apartment next door. Concerned, I knocked on the door, only to find my elderly neighbor, Mr. Liu, had fallen and couldn't get up. I helped Mr. Liu to his feet and called for medical assistance. As we waited for the paramedics, we began to talk. Mr. Liu, it turned out, was a retired martial arts instructor who now led a Tai Chi group in the local park. He invited me to join, insisting that the exercise and company would do me good. Initially, I was reluctant. The thought of learning something new at my age seemed daunting. But Mr. Liu was persistent, and eventually I agreed, if only to have something to do other than stare at my walls. To my surprise, I found solace in the gentle movements of Tai Chi and the company of others my age. Through the group, I met other retirees who had similar experiences with their children. We formed a support network, sharing meals, going on short trips, and looking out for each other. One of the group members, Mrs. Chen, told me about a part-time job at the community center, teaching calligraphy to children. Despite my initial doubts, who would want to learn from an old man like me? I applied and got the position. Teaching calligraphy brought back the joy I used to feel in my classroom years ago. The children's enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself looking forward to each class. The small income helped supplement my pension, allowing me to maintain some semblance of independence. As I became more involved in community activities, I discovered a talent for storytelling. The local library invited me to host a weekly story hour for young children. It was heartwarming to see the kids gathered around, eyes wide with wonder as I recounted tales from Chinese folklore and my own childhood. These new activities not only provided additional income, but also gave me a sense of purpose. I was no longer just a forgotten old man, but a valued member of the community. The parents of my students often sought my advice, reminding me that my years of experience were still valuable. Meanwhile, I learned to live frugally but contentedly. I mastered the art of cooking simple, nutritious meals for myself, and even started a small vegetable garden on my balcony. The fresh herbs and vegetables not only saved me money, but gave me immense satisfaction. As the years passed, I came to terms with the fact that the close family bond I had hoped for in my twilight years might never materialize. Jian eventually called, not to repay the loan, but to ask for more money. This time, I found the strength to refuse. It was difficult, but I knew I had to protect what little I had left. May occasionally sent messages from Canada, but our relationship remained strained. However, I found family in unexpected places. In the Tai Chi group that checked on me daily, in the children who eagerly awaited my stories, and in the neighbors who invited me to share meals. I even found a close friend in Mrs. Wang, a widow who shared my love for classical literature. Our friendship blossomed into a deep companionship, proving that it's never too late for love and connection. Now, as I approach my 83rd birthday, I reflect on the twists and turns of my journey. Life didn't turn out as I had planned or hoped, but I've learned valuable lessons. I've discovered resilience I never knew I had, and found joy in simple pleasures. Most importantly, I've learned that it's never too late to build a fulfilling life, even if it looks different from what we initially envisioned. My days now are filled with purpose and contentment. I wake early to tend to my balcony garden, then head to the park for Tai Chi. Afternoons are spent teaching calligraphy or telling stories at the library. Evenings often find me sharing a simple meal with Mrs. Wang or other friends from my community. I've even started writing my memoirs, hoping that my experiences might offer guidance or comfort to others facing similar challenges. Through this process, I've come to realize that our worth isn't determined by our bank balance or our children's actions, but by the kindness we show and the positive impact we have on those around us. Life may have thrown me some curveballs, but I'm still standing, still learning, and still finding reasons to smile each day. And in the end, isn't that what truly matters? As I close this chapter of my story, I look to the future with hope. I may be in my twilight years, but I've learned that each day is a gift, an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to make a difference in someone's life. And for that, I am profoundly grateful.